I hear a lot of scary shopping stories, and they are usually from the perspective of the person shopping. However, my scariest experience happened when I was working at a bookstore. About 2 months after I was promoted from bookseller to assistant manager, we were hit by the Christmas rush. It was always so overwhelming, really. By the end of the night, everyone was so wiped out. Getting all the receipts and drawers counted at the end of the night took a lot of time. On the nights that I was closing, I let the workers go as soon as they were done. There was no reason to make them stick around and be tired while I was finishing up my work. After I let everyone go, I went back to the office to do my work. After a while, I heard the doorbell ring. We had security cameras, but there wasn't one at the door, so I had to go to the front door and see who it was. There was a guy there dressed in dark clothes with his hood up. I asked him how I could help him, of course, watching him through the door. He told me, "Hey dude, I left my wallet in your store," and continued to say, "Can you open the door and let me come in and get it?" I asked him where he thought he had left it and that I would look for it for him. He didn't like that idea and told me he wasn't sure. He had been shopping through the entire store and would have to look for it. I asked him if he had bought anything, and he told me yes, which meant he had to have his wallet on him at that point. I pointed that out to him, and he seemed taken a bit back. I told him we didn't get anything turned in, but I could take his information and get back to him if we find anything. The man began getting angry, telling me that he needed his wallet tonight and he couldn't wait for me to look for it. He kept insisting that I let him in so he could look for it. When I told him that there was no way I was letting him in the store this late and while I was alone, he began getting visibly angry. He told me that if I didn't let him in the place right away, he would call the police and tell them that I stole his wallet. He even got his cell phone out of his pocket and acted like he was going to call. At that point, I had enough. I told the guy the best I could do for him was take his information and call him if anything was found. I then told him that if this wasn't good enough, then there wasn't anything at all that I could do for him. He got really angry and began swearing at me. He grabbed the door and began shaking it, demanding that I open the door. I told him I was going to walk over to the customer service desk and call the police. I wasn't willing to cooperate anymore. As I made my way over there, I noticed the guy take off down the street. I thought that was the end of him, and I figured that I didn't really need to bother the police for this. I went back to my work and tried my best to get it done so I could go home and get some rest. It took me about 2 hours to honestly finish all of my work. I hadn't heard the doorbell ring and pretty much figured that I wouldn't be seeing that guy again. However, when I went to the front of the store, I looked around to see if anyone was in the parking lot before I went outside. I went out to my car in the cold and couldn't wait to get out of the cold. However, I froze when I was maybe within a couple of feet away from my car. There was someone in the back seat of my car. He was hiding down in the back seat with his hood over his head. But there was definitely someone in the back seat of my car, and I knew exactly who it had to be. Furthermore, he must have seen me or he wouldn't have ducked down. I did the only thing I could think of to do. I turned and ran back to the store at full speed. I didn't look back around until I had made it to the door. And yeah, he was coming at me. I unlocked the door and shut it behind me. He made it to the door right before I could lock it, so I had to do my best to hold it closed while trying to turn the lock. As I did, the man screamed all sorts of obscenities at me, telling me he was going to kill me. As the door opened outward, I quickly pushed it toward him, knocking him to the ground. Before he could realize what had happened and recover, I was able to get the door closed and locked. I immediately called the police. The guy left after the door was locked, but the police picked him up pretty quickly. I still get scared when I think about that day. The thought of what could have happened if I hadn't made it back into the store sends chills down my spine. It was like something out of a horror movie. Definitely one of the scariest days of my life. Before we move on to our second story, make sure to subscribe to our channel, turn on the notifications, and like this video. This story takes place 4 years ago, and it still haunts me to this day. It was Christmas night, and my family was driving home from this fancy restaurant. I, unlike my family, wasn't tired, so the 45-minute drive seemed perpetual. On top of that, my little sister was constantly moaning about how her friend didn't get her anything for Christmas. After about 20 minutes of driving, my dad stopped at a gas station to get some cigarettes, and my sister, brother, and mother all got out to use the restroom. I stayed in the car as I had already gone before we left. Once they all left, I decided to play a few games on my phone. I looked at the car clock and saw that 10 minutes had passed, so I immediately wondered what was taking them so long. As soon as I peered out the car window, I saw a man staring at our car. The man startled me as I didn't know how long he had been watching. What made it even more unnerving was that he had a plain blank face. No expression was shown. It was hard to make out any features as it was pretty dark, and he wasn't standing in an illuminated part of the station. He was about 5'9" and looked to be middle-aged. Once he saw me notice him, he started walking towards the car, and I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't scared. Luckily, my dad returned with the rest of the family just as the man took a couple of steps. My dad apologized and told me he had been in an argument with the cashier. I didn't care. I was just glad that my dad was with me. I took another glance at the man outside, and he was still staring, but this time, he had an annoyed look on his face. We drove off, and for the rest of the car ride, I couldn't stop thinking about that man. This wouldn't have been too bad if it had ended there, but it didn't. Later that night, I was watching YouTube while everyone else slept, and luckily for me, a storm was raging over us. I enjoy storms. It makes me cozy as I'm lying in bed. I put my phone down and just enjoyed the ambiance. That didn't last for long, as I heard something smash into the window behind me. I lurched forward and nearly fell out of the bed. I thought a bird had just smashed into the window. I parted the blinds, and what I saw next haunted me. I saw a man standing out by my parents' cars, looking up at my room. I took a closer look, and I nearly had a heart attack. It was the same man that I saw at the gas station, only this time, when our eyes met, he grinned. Being the 14-year-old I was, I did the manly thing and screamed at the top of my lungs. My dad came running down the stairs and entered my room. "Why are you screaming?" he said. I told him about the man, and I explained everything that had happened before. My dad grabbed a baseball bat and told me to call the police. After 10 minutes, the police turned up outside our house and found the man in our shed. He got arrested, and that was the last time I saw him. The next day, my dad inspected the house, and we found the handle of our back door had been damaged, but not completely broken. This gives me an eerie feeling, as if he actually managed to get in. He could have harmed us, or possibly killed us. It is one of the scariest things that has ever happened to me and my family, and I still get chills when thinking about it.